Hi, this is Peter from the Movable Chef. Today we're going to make muhammara, which is a really fantastic Middle Eastern dip or spread. And it's based upon walnuts and pomegranate molasses, some Aleppo pepper, some red bell pepper that's been roasted, and it's got this really earthy, nutty, little fiery, sweet, sour, complex flavor, which is just fantastic. The first thing to do in making muhammara, and actually the only cooking you do, is you need to toast some walnuts. Just regular walnuts, raw walnuts, and about a cup of those go into a cookie sheet. Spread them around, and it goes into a 350-degree oven. It doesn't take long. It's going to take 8 to 10 minutes at the most. And you want to make sure they don't burn, because if they burn, you're going to have to throw them away and start over. So after a couple minutes, check them, shake them a little bit. After 4 minutes, turn the pan around so it goes evenly, and then start checking for done at 6 or 7 minutes at the longest. You really don't want these to burn. I'm going to pop these in the oven, and then I'll check back when they're done. Okay, my walnuts are out of the oven. That's about the way they should look. You want them tan, toasted, not burnt. You have to let these cool very thoroughly. You don't want to process them when they're hot. So let them cool down, and give that about 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll come back and make the muhammara. All right, so our walnuts have been toasted and cooled, and now we're just going to make the muhammara. It comes together very, very quickly. A couple things, a couple points. You really don't want to over-process the walnuts. It completely changes the consistency, and it gets very gluey. It's almost like making mashed potatoes in the food processor, where those starches get cut and they get short, and it becomes kind of paste-like. So it's important not to over-process these. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add these first and process them until they're about the consistency of breadcrumbs, but still a little bit loose like that. And then we're just going to scrape them out into the bowl and move on with the rest of the ingredients. So just pulse until they're chopped up. Okay, so that should be good. The goal here is not to make walnut butter. It's just to chop them very finely, about the consistency of breadcrumbs. And then we're going to go and pull them out, because if we leave them in there and continue to process all the other ingredients, we will over-process these, and you'll get a texture or consistency that's not desirable. So we're going to scrape these out, scrape down the sides, get all the walnuts into the bowl. And then everything else can just be tossed in the food processor and processed till effectively smooth, and then added back into the walnuts at the end. So into the food processor. I'm making a double recipe. That was a cup of walnuts, so I need 2 cups of breadcrumbs. If you're short of breadcrumbs, the original would have had pita chips or pita bread as the breadcrumb component. So just grab a little bit over a cup of pita chips for a half cup of crumbs, and throw them in there. And just grind those up until you've got a fine consistency. Just pulse real quick. Now remember, if you're using pita chips as your source of breadcrumbs, omit some salt later on. Next we get about a cup of olive oil. Let's add that directly to the breadcrumbs. That finishes off this bottle of olive oil. And we'll get about 2 teaspoons of cumin. A quarter of a red onion, let's toss it in there. A couple tablespoons of Aleppo pepper, which is a really smoky, sun-dried pepper from Syria. We've got roasted red peppers. These are from a jar. You could roast them yourself, certainly, but you don't need to. We've got about a solid cup, more than a cup of roasted red peppers here, which looks like it's about 5 to 6 small red peppers, about 5 small red peppers. So if you're roasting them yourself, that's the quantity. We want a couple tablespoons of tomato paste. We want just shy of a quarter cup, just about 3 tablespoons of pomegranate molasses. And then just a couple teaspoons of tahini. Tablespoon and a half of tahini, just shy of a couple tablespoons. So that's a tablespoon and a half. You'll notice from the labels that for things like pomegranate molasses, tahini, the best place to go is the Middle Eastern markets. It's there, they go through the stock quickly, so it's fresh and it's inexpensive. So we're going to put the lid back on this and just process this till it's smooth. A little trouble with the onion chopping up. Let's push that down a little bit. Scrape down the sides and process everything back through. Okay, let's just test for salt. That's about right. I wouldn't actually add any more salt to that. So finally, the walnuts, toss them back in. I know I said we don't want to over process this, and we don't. We're just tossing them back in just to stir them in. So this gets about a 5-second pulse. Okay, maybe 2 5-second pulses. There we go. And the muhammara is finished. We'll go ahead and plate this up, and we'll take a look at it. All right, here's the muhammara. If you'd like to garnish this with something, you can always top it off with a little bit more olive oil, and maybe a sprinkling of pine nuts. They'll add a little bit of interest, a little of texture, and they contrast really nicely with the deep, deep red of the pepper paste. If you're seeing this on the video, I've not done anything to the color balance. It really is this red. And it's a savory, sweet, sort of sweet and sour almost because of the pomegranate molasses. And it's really just a fantastic dip. If you've not had it before, very much recommend you make it. If you're a big fan of muhammara, this is probably my favorite recipe for it. So this has been Peter from The Movable Chef. For the recipe, the list of ingredients, and other tips on making muhammara, please go to themovablechef.com. Thanks a lot.